1916, while New Zealand focused on a great world war 12,000 miles away, another war ended in the heart of the North Island. Māori prophet Ruakenana had built a thriving community at Maungapohatu in the rugged Urewera. Maungapohatu was the last stronghold of Māori independence. Rua was not hostile to Pākehā or to change, but he would not accept Pākehā rule. In the midst of a world war, the government would not accept Rua's state within a state. On Sunday, 2nd of April 1916, armed police converged on Maungapohatu. A gunfight broke out, and at least 8 people were killed or wounded. Historians have described this as the last shooting of the New Zealand Wars.
The main body of the New Zealand Wars took place between 1843 and 1872. My generation didn't learn much about them at school. What we did learn was a sanitised version, supporting New Zealand's reputation as a paradise of racial harmony. The wars, we were told, were nice, clean little fights with gloves on, after which Māori and Pākehā kissed, made up and lived happily ever after. Real wars, like real history, were supposed to happen overseas. Yet the New Zealand Wars raged across the whole of the North Island for almost 30 years, with heroism and massacre on both sides. They wrenched New Zealand history into new shapes. They left deep wounds, concealed but not healed by the scabs of legend, and we're still paying for them in more ways than one. The wars helped make Māori and Pākehā, lumping Māori tribes into a people and splitting Pākehā settlers off from the old British. They were New Zealand's great civil war, the grand clash of its two peoples. My name's James Belich, and this is their story.
These are veterans of the New Zealand Wars. There are few images of them at the time of conflict. They were old when the cameras caught up with them, young when they took up arms. Well into the 20th century, veterans still turned out to commemorate their deeds on New Zealand's battlefields. In 1908, one contingent of veterans marched through Wellington to celebrate Dominion Day. The same year, another turned out in Auckland to welcome the American Navy. They were joined by the Māori king Mahuta, a descendant of their arch-enemy. In 1911, more veterans paraded through New Plymouth's Pukakura Park. We need to see the real lives and real history behind these images. They are not mementos hanging on walls or hidden away in dusty photo albums, but real flesh and blood. The last vestiges of the men and women who fought the New Zealand Wars. They made history. We forgot it.
From the beginning of contact in 1642 until 1840, there were a dozen or so violent clashes between Māori and European, some quite major. Yet the really surprising thing is not the amount of violence, but the lack of it.
In the decades before 1840, something like 1,000 European and American ships visited New Zealand, each with an average crew of 30 men. About 200 whaling, trading, timber and mission stations dotted the coasts.
In relation to thousands upon thousands of contact incidents, a dozen or so violent incidents was not a lot. The fact is that before 1840, Māori and European got on remarkably well. There were two reasons for this: sex and guns.
The gun trade led to the terrible musket wars of the 1820s, when generals such as Hongi Hika of Ngāpuhi rampaged through the land. Thousands were killed and thousands more enslaved. The musket wars moved from north to south in a domino effect. They ended in the 1830s, once all tribes had guns. Brown Bess muskets encouraged into tribal violence, but discouraged into racial violence. To survive, Māori had to have muskets, and to get muskets, they had to have Europeans. 8 large pigs and 150 baskets of potatoes were a typical price for a musket. The dried heads of enemies killed by one gun could be traded for another. But the proceeds from traded goods weren't nearly enough for the thousands of muskets Māori needed. The balance of payments deficit was made up by services, especially sex. Before 1840, the settlers living in New Zealand were mostly men. They were linked into tribal society by formal or informal marriages to Māori women, a treaty made in bed. From 1800, whaling ships visited the coast, stopping a few weeks for supplies and recreation. The captains paid guns for the supplies, and the sailors paid guns for the recreation. A 3-week sex contract with a Māori woman usually cost 1 musket and 1 dress. By the 1830s, this sex trade became New Zealand's biggest industry. Missionaries left few details. French visitors were less coy.
We were given an exhibition of their love dances. Nothing could be more lewd or more obscene than their movements, gestures and poses. Their arms and breasts were tattooed, with the names of their lovers, the name of the ship and the date of its visit. The New Zealanders are astonishingly salacious.
The sex industry supplied Māori with guns in bulk at a price their menfolk at least could afford. Ironically, the gun trade helped keep the peace between the races. If Māori mistreated Europeans, the vital trade would stop. If Europeans mistreated Māori, they would be killed. Before the 1840s, few Europeans tried it.
Māori needed Europeans and Europeans needed Māori. It's this that explains the surprisingly low rate of interracial violence before the 1840s.